Hello everybody, I have a 2007 Ford Edge here. I'm going to replace the rear wheel bearing. I think it's like a hub and bearing assembly. So I've got the car jacked up and set on a jack stand, and of course I just took the wheel and tire off there to go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm doing is pulling off the brake caliper. So there's some guide fasteners here that I'm taking out. There are 14mm fasteners, and I'm going to pull the caliper off and just kind of suspend it from, find somewhere on the frame or to kind of hang it from. I'm using a little bungee cord to hang it up out of the way and keep the tension off of the brake line there itself. So next thing I'm going to do is pull there's a guide here for the caliper guide fasteners. Those are 15mm bolt pin on those that I'm taking off. So I'll pull those out and just go ahead and pull that guide off so I can get to the rotor. Aside, and then I'll pull off the brake rotor here. Okay, so pulled off the rotor, and now I'm underneath the car, looking kind of at the back of the wheel hub. There's a small sensor wire that's held on by an 8mm bolt. So pull that out. And then there's 4 larger fasteners. They're a Torx bit, star bit, and the size for these is a T60. So I didn't originally have this size Torx bit. So I used a piece of Play-Doh and actually stuck it in the head there, and then I took that with me to the auto port store to make sure I got the right size Torx bit that will fit. It seemed to work okay. I ended up with the right one, so. But it is a T60 for this particular car. Okay, so now I'm back around the front. I'm going to go ahead and slide the bearing hub assembly will come loose, and the emergency brake there will come off with it. So I had a little trouble because I couldn't get the sensor to pull out from the backside, so it was a little sticky, but I finally got it out. And then the bearing itself, just comes right off, bearing it up there. There's the sensor. So putting this back together, I have a manual. The manual says to actually buy new hardware. It's not real specific, so fasteners and things. So do your own check-in and make sure you follow the recommended practices for this. Again, it did say buy new hardware, and it also talks about putting on some Loctite before you install these fasteners. So again, check around and make sure you're doing the appropriate thing for your particular vehicle, making sure you're putting Loctite on, torquing all the fasteners to the correct torque. Now I'm putting on the sensor bolt there in the back, and I'm just tightening everything by hand. So I'll run over some of the torque values that the manual I have shows. Again, make sure on your own car, your own application, you go and double check all these to make sure they're correct. These are just for reference from what I've seen. So the hub, the bearing assembly, the large fasteners, the 4 fasteners that go in the back, the torque value that it's showing is 98 foot-pounds on those. So I'm tightening everything I can from from the outside of the car. You know, I can pretty much get in there and get things started at least, and you know, begin to tighten them down. And then here I actually got underneath to make sure you know, I'm going straight on those bolts to make sure that I'm not cross-threading them or stripping the heads out and getting them very tight there. Alright, so got those tight, put the rotor back on, and now I'm going to start, you know, putting the caliper mounting bracket here on, and the caliper itself. So again, on the mounting bracket, I believe it calls out for some Loctite to be put on those. Again, my book shows 66 foot-pounds is the torque that should be applied to these, you know, the caliper mounting bracket there. Now I have the caliper. I try to put it on, and it has drifted a little bit. You know, the plunger there had kind of drifted out, so I couldn't get the caliper back over the brake pad, so I have to depress that a little bit. What I'm doing here, and then go ahead and slide it right on over the brake pads. For the caliper guide bolts, these ones that I'm putting in here, my manual shows 19 foot-pounds on these. These are 14 millimeter if you're putting those in. So again, check all your values, your torque values, and if you should be putting Loctite in your fasteners before. You know, before you start, make sure you look all that information up on your vehicle. Get those tightened down. Alright, now I'm ready to put the wheel and tire back on. You know, everything went pretty smooth. Just make sure you bolt everything back up, you know, double check and make sure everything's tight. So I'm putting the wheel back on. My manual shows 100 foot-pounds. This is the torque value for the lug nuts themselves. So I'm putting them on. I start them on by hand, and then I have an electric torque wrench that I run them down with, just to get them started on. Again, the car is off the ground right now. You know, be safe on everything you're doing. Make sure you're being safe. Have jack stands under the car. And once I get those down, I'll let the car down, and I'll go ahead and tighten up those lug nuts. Here I am by hand, just to make sure they're tight. You know, I trust the torque wrench, but it doesn't give me a torque value, so I want to make sure they're good and tight. So, anyways, not a terrible job. Thanks for watching.